Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Diane Hayden, publisher of Natural Nutmeg Magazine and Essential Naples Magazine. And welcome to our Lunch and Learn videos, where we interview expert writers and contributors on how to cope with the COVID-19 situation and ways to live a more natural, holistic lifestyle. Today, I have with me Stephen Frank. He's the owner of Nature's Rite Remedies, and he's been researching respiratory infection therapy for 15 years. He holds 3 patents in this area and has conducted research at the Institute for Tuberculosis Research, National Jewish Hospital, and Clearson Corporation. And his work was presented to ANMA in 2006. So thanks so much for being with us today. How are you, Stephen?
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, Diane, and I'm doing well this morning.
So this is going to be a great, timely interview with everything that's been going on. I'm sure people are very interested in what your research and what you have to say. I know I definitely am. So my first question is, how did you actually get interested or involved in natural medicine?
Good question. I started out my career as a biomedical engineer, designing electronic medical equipment. Most of it was rather experimental in nature. And so I got to deal with an awful lot of doctors doing research, postdocs, PhDs, MDs who were conducting research and designing custom equipment for them. Then I started having kids. And if you've ever had kids, you know, they bring home the catch of the day. Then they go to school and they go to daycare. And there's nothing more frustrating to a parent than having a sick child when there's nothing that you can do for them. If they get a cold, if they get a sore throat, you're chasing symptoms and making them feel comfortable. As an engineer, that was unacceptable. I thought, these are problems, we have to have solutions. And after the allopathic medical solutions failed me a number of times, I started to look into some of the other areas and found some very interesting solutions, began testing them, doing medical research, and then I got out of engineering and started to take some of the medical solutions that I found and turn them into products so that everybody could use them. And next thing you know, here I am. I've got a whole bunch of products. I've spent years doing research, what some people might consider heretical medicine, but I think more realistically are ideas and concepts that were before their time. And most of what I've learned is really applicable to everyday health because that's what I was dealing with. That's how I got here.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We call what we do, the industries we work in, complementary or all alternative. And to me, I feel like, well, traditional medicine, in my mind, has been around for 5,000 years from
Longer.
from the East. So what's traditional medicine in the US? It should be the other way around.
In fact, in Thailand, it is. They consider allopathic Western medicine complementary and alternative.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep, for sure. So you began your career as an engineer and then transitioned into medical research before designing the natural health products that you design. How do you think this circuitous path shaped your company and your products?
Well, it has had everything to do with how my company, my products have turned out. Most people that go into the natural medicine world start out in that regard and follow through book learning as a DO, as an ND, and they learn the traditional path. I came into that kind of sideways, and I came in with a engineering mindset. And the engineering mindset is very different, I think, than a lot of practitioners. I look for solutions. When things don't work, I ask why and look for an alternative. Whereas most of the allopathic practitioners that I see simply apply what is given to them. And, so if you're a surgeon, you cut things. And if you're into internal medicine, you give drugs and such. But as an engineer, I would look at all of the tools that were available, look at the issue that we wanted to solve, and then pick the best ones to solve it. So when you approach the problems that way, I would develop a holistic solution to rather normal problems that did three things really. Um, we have to address the symptoms, because if you didn't have symptoms, you wouldn't be looking for something, right? People will ignore their sickness unless it causes them discomfort. But we can't stop there. You have to fix the cause, because if you don't fix the cause, from an engineering standpoint, I can tell you it'll come right back.
Hmm.
And then the third thing that you have to do is help the body to heal. So when we productize the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years, we try to meet all of those criteria. And so coming from an engineering background, especially biomedical, having to learn, physiology and chemistry well enough to support the doctors and some of the relatively unusual machines that we're building, I've been able to produce a synthesis of that and combine it with an engineering mentality. So instead of just selling you comfrey to heal a wound, which has been used for thousands and thousands of years as a poultice, I will say, okay, well, we need more than to increase the activity level of the fibroblasts in order to knit the tissue back together. We have to deal with the pain. So we'll probably look at some arnica and some white willow. But more than that, we have to be able to increase the lymphatic flow and the vascular flow to the region so that these semi-motile um, fibroblasts can get there and produce collagen to repair the wound. So we'll need something for that. So I'm trying to deal with the pain, improve the healing, and close the wound all at the same time to get a more holistic response. So rather than just walking down the aisle at a natural health products and saying, what herb do I need? You pick up a product that addresses the problem that you have, and it will have a number of different herbs to support a number of different functions. And that's what makes us different.
Yeah, that's great. I think that most people, when they go into a health food store, unless there is someone there that's really good at helping them navigate through, are kind of just wandering through the aisles like, I don't know what, like, here's a category of immune support. I'll just grab one thing off the counter, and they really, they don't know. Or worse, I find people go to CVS or Walmart and, buy the cheapest thing they can find.
Right.
And that's what we've tried to do a lot in terms of education on, with natural therapies, you get what you pay for. And not only that, you really need to understand, like what you're saying, what are all the ingredients that are in the products, and how do they all work together to help me. Um, so you started to go into my next question: what makes your products different from other herbal and natural
Ah,
remedies?
right. Well, it is just that, isn't it? It's the not only do we put together a group of herbs or constituents to address all the aspects of a holistic response, get the symptoms taken care of and fix the cause and help the body to heal. But oftentimes, what you'll find that's missing, especially when you go to the health food stores, is how to use it correctly. There are, for instance, in the world of infectious disease, there are a lot of people out there selling silver colloids. Well, I have heard people tell me that there is no evidence to suggest that silver colloids are antimicrobial. Well, that's patently false. I have reams of data, years of testing, showing quite conclusively we're achieving kill ratios 10 to the 6th, 10 to the 7th. I've tested them against 3T3 cells to show that they're actually non-toxic and not harmful. So we know that the silver colloid is actually very antimicrobial. We're not allowed to say this, but we know that it is. So if you go to a store and you buy a product that says take a teaspoon of it and hold it under your tongue, well, I can tell you from experience, 20 years of it, that will do absolutely nothing. If you have food poisoning, Holding 2 or 3 drops under your tongue is not going to help because the food poisoning is not under your tongue. If you have a sinus infection, that won't help it either because the sinus infection isn't under your tongue. So one of the things that we do with our products is to tell you how to use it so that you get the right amount of the right active agent in the right place. If you have a sinus infection, use it in an neti pot or spray it up your nose with a spray bottle. If you have food poisoning, then you'll drink it. If you have a skin infection, you'll want to put it on the skin. So getting it in the right place is critical. And the other aspect of it that we teach, and other companies don't, how often do you use it? Through the years, with all the research that I've done, I have had opportunities to address a number of different problems and see quite clearly that if you don't take it often enough, if you get the protocol wrong, it doesn't work. You get the protocol correct, and it does work. I'm thinking, in particular, urinary tract infections. We did a series of studies where we could show that the bacterial titer coming from the urine was knocked down very low after each dose. But before we got the next dose, it had come back up again. So we said, oh, we're knocking it down, but it's coming back. We're not winning this battle. But we moved the dosing closer together, and then it went down and down and down, and then we win. So oftentimes you'll find that the difference between our product and someone else's product is we'll have a protocol that works. We've done it through clinical studies and field studies, worked with it in the lab. If you have a sinus infection, it's absolutely critical that you spray it up your nose every 20 minutes. If you do it 2 or 3 times a day, it will do nothing. You'll kill the population, and within a year, it will be right back. I've seen this for years and years and years. But if you do it with the right protocol, well, then sinus infections that nobody's been able to touch fall away.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, for people to know because it reminds me of the many studies that I've read where, these big studies have used either vitamin C or vitamin D to try to figure out whether or not they actually are effective to support
Mhm.
your immune system. And you look at the dosages that they're using,
Right?
and it's nothing. It's ridiculous. It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
gee, I wonder why there wasn't a statistical effect here because what are they using like 5 milligrams of vitamin C? So, yeah, definitely, that's really important. I think that's a great way to set your company apart is to help people understand not only what to take, but in what dosage and how often. Because you're right, it makes it definitely determines whether or not it's effective or not.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Yep. So what sort of testing do you perform on your products?
Mm. Well, we're a GMP facility. And so we do a lot of quality control testing, a lot of quality control testing and documenting. And of course, there's an awful lot of paperwork that goes along with that. We send the colloids out for assay. We send our silver out for assay. We send any of the liquids that we use in the decoctions out for assay. Any of the herbs that are in ingestibles are tested for microbiology, and they're tested for any kind of toxic metal content. And so all of the standard GMP testing is done to ensure the quality products. But we also do field testing when we have a new product, make sure that it works. We do some clinical studies, although they're rather limited because they're quite expensive. And we do a lot of microbiology work. Over the years, I've done dozens and dozens of microbiology assays testing some of our antimicrobial products directly against staph, even MRSA, against pneumonia in various forms, against salmonella, typhoid, cholera. We'll design assays and send them off to the micro labs, have them perform that and see how they work. So when we optimize our products, we're optimizing them based on what we see as a very real effect. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we have the prettiest product or it looks best under this scanning electron microscope or we have the best surface area to particle ratio. I don't care. What I care is, does it kill germs the best? And so we do an awful lot of testing on that. Quality testing, purity testing, field testing. Recently, someone approached me and said, could you add CBD to your back and neck lotion? We have a lotion that relieves tightness in the muscles when you get a neck ache or wake up with a stiff neck. It also relaxes the herbs, increases the blood flow to the region, relieves pain, the full holistic solution. And it really works great. But I started to toy with that. I thought, well, the CBD is pretty good with pain. So we made up a number of different batches using oil-based CBDs with emulsifiers and water-soluble CBDs, and we sent them out into the field with questionnaires and had the people do a comparison, A/B comparison. We would send them one bottle that was just the herbs and one bottle that was the herbs plus the various CBDs. And then at the end of each time they use it, they would write down the effects. And I take all that data back and compile it and see what works and what doesn't. So we can get the dosing and the proportioning correct and find out and sell a product that really works. That's important to us. I'm not interested in being a Me Too seller. Just I can be another person selling comfrey or arnica or vitamins. I'm not interested in that. I want to address more difficult issues that no one else can with products that really work.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. I mean, the nutritional supplement industry is quite saturated.
It is
And yeah, there's so many companies that just, come out with the same sort of thing, maybe tweak it a little bit, put some different ingredient in it. But yeah, I definitely love what you're saying about how it's important to you that you're really looking for solutions that help people and and solutions that are going to be effective. And with
absolutely
pain is such an individualized thing too. I think it's um how people respond from one to the next is so different. So
true.
that in and of itself is challenging, I think, to try to come up with
Very.
formulas. Yeah.
When we pursued a formula for arthritis, joint pain, that was an extraordinary challenge because there are at least a half a dozen things that cause arthritis. Well, as an engineer, I can tell you if there's a half a dozen different causes, you're going to have a hard time picking a set of herbs that will address them all. And as you mentioned, pain is very subjective, and there are a lot of aggravating conditions. So we went through about a half a dozen different formulas until we found one that when we would send it out into the population worked for most of the people. And that's one of those products where I'm going to tell you, that's where our money back guarantee comes in, because I don't know if it's going to work for you. No clinical study is going to tell you whether it works for you. They're going to tell you how well it works on a average section of the population at best.
Right. Yeah.
With a lot of these, the only way you're going to know is to buy it and try it. So that's why we say if it doesn't work for you, just send it back. I don't want your money.
Yeah, that's a great policy. That's so true. um and it's funny that you say, like, who it works for. It's interesting to me that pharmaceutical companies can come out and basically come out with products that work for like less than 1% of the population,
They
but
can
everybody takes
demonstrate,
it.
yeah, they can demonstrate efficacy quite well. They manipulate the inclusion exclusion criteria on their clinical studies before and after the studies. It's amazing what can get actually approved and the claims they're allowed to make.
I know it is. That's a whole nother talk we can do some other
Yeah,
time.
really.
So this question, I'm sure everybody is interested in, what have we learned from the COVID-19 pandemic? And I'm excited to hear your take on this, just being, your background in respiratory infection therapy, and what do you think about it all?
I think about it a lot, Diane. I really do. There are some countries that have handled it better than others, and I try and glean from that to see, in fact, what they're doing that we didn't do. And I struggle with the shelter at home policies because it's a balance between a loss of freedom and civil support,
Hmm.
which is necessary in any society. But the one thing that frustrates me the most is that this respiratory infection is best dealt with a antimicrobial agent that's delivered directly to the problem. You know, and we spoke about that earlier. What they should be doing is, and I have one here too, putting it's a nebulizer. You just
Okay. Yep.
right, and you can administer then an antimicrobial agent of your choice, whether that's silver colloid or something else at your choice, directly to the source where the virus is replicating. I don't understand why, as a society, we're so reluctant to do that. There's really no downside to it. There's no damage or injury or bad side effects. So I think one of the things we've learned from this is that society, when they're approached with a situation that they don't know how to handle, will grapple only with the tools that they have. So allopathic medicine will go with machines, ventilators, and drugs, and they'll flail around looking for a drug that works. If they don't have one, they'll give you something anyway. They're not going to let you go without giving you something. And that, I think, is a problem that's endemic within our medical community. There are so many other opportunities that we have that we could be looking at. So we've learned that our medical response to a crisis like this is very narrow-minded and one-sided. And I think that's something for the next generation to face, address, and repair. It will take some changes in legislation. I think one of the other things we learned is that the people who are giving us guidance and advice and helping us to understand what's happening in a pandemic, we've all seen that they're not telling us the truth. They're manipulating us with what they tell us in the same way that any country would, most even countries that don't have freedom of speech. And this is something that has been really crippling to our society, to not get the right story, to not be well informed, because it keeps us from wanting to come together as a team and deal with the reality of it.
Right. How would you compare it? And I'm going to go off topic a little bit, but I'm just curious to get some of your thoughts on this. How would you compare it to just the regular seasonal flu that we get?
Hmm. Yeah, I started doing that a lot when it first came out, asking myself, if this is just like the flu, then why is everyone running around in such a panic? And I think there's a number of key distinctions. And again, this is an area where the people from the CDC should be allowed to tell us honestly without being censored by uh,
Whoever,
whoever.
powers that be.
Um,
Yep.
yes, yes, yes. Uh, I think this is much more contagious than the flu. I think it lasts on surfaces longer than the flu. Its viral capsid seems to be more durable than the flu. The effects are much more broad ranging, so it's more difficult to diagnose. The onset can be delayed, so much so that you can be a carrier without knowing it. And the severity of it in some people is much more than the flu. So, yes, it carries a significantly higher death rate, and it's more easily communicated within a population because people are less able to know they have it and can communicate it long before they're even symptomatic. So it is clearly a more troublesome virus than a simple influenza virus. And they knew this back in December.
Yep.
Now, there are countries, Thailand did very well, Vietnam did very well, because they recognized it and jumped on it and took a lot of proactive measures. Um, had we done that, it would have been a very different outcome.
Yeah. And I was just reading this morning an article about, because I'm very curious about the whole virology, piece of it, about how it survives. I was reading mostly flu and things like that. Do you think that also with some of those countries that are more humid and higher heat, that it it doesn't survive as well, similar to the flu?
That's really a very interesting thing that I've spent a lot of time pondering because when the outbreak occurred, I was in Thailand, and I'm going to tell you, it was pretty hot and humid,
Mm-hmm.
and that did not stop it.
Interesting.
Yes. So when I came back here and I heard people saying, well, when we get into the summer, I was very skeptical that the summer was going to do anything. It doesn't get any hotter or more humid here than it does in Southeast Asia, and that did not seem to be slowing it at all. Now, the people that really study the uh, numerical significance behind the spread of the population in various parts of the world and the parts of the community will be able to answer that much more specifically and correctly. But my gut feeling was this is not something that is very sensitive to the environment, whether it be humid or hot.
Yeah. And so then that sets it apart on another level from your typical seasonal flu too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that's why the coronavirus tends to be able to last longer on surfaces. It has a more robust capsid.
Right. Exactly. Um, so your recommendations, I mean, what would you say from your product line that someone would use in order to just, boost their immunity or even use it if they have COVID-19?
That's an interesting question that goes in two directions. How does one boost one's immunity? And then what would you use to directly attack the pathogen? That's a good two-pronged approach. Of course, I would add in the third, well, let's deal with the symptoms as well. And then you have a nice holistic approach to solving this problem from the natural medical community, which is something that could probably be offered up in a number of different ways, but is being ignored and suppressed. So from my product line, I would clearly get on the respiratory relief. I don't know if you can see that,
Yeah, you
and
can.
put that the in the nebulizer, and I would nebulize with that a lot. You can't do it too much. I would lay that down right on top of where they're replicating and use that to inhibit their replication. As far as systemically, I have other systemic antimicrobials that are my go-tos to knock it out once it's gone planktonic throughout your body and it's causing you all sorts of other symptoms. My particular favorite is the sodium chloride, which I've used for years, works great, and has gotten absolutely maligned in the media because they're trying to suppress that, which is quite shameful. And then as far as the strengthening of the immune system, I'm a firm believer that vitamin C, just like you said, is very good at that. Linus Pauling had it right. He was basically guiding us towards taking 2 to 3 grams a day. 250 milligrams, which you'll find in some capsules, is pointless.
Hmm.
And there are a number of things that you can use. A lot of people like the echinacea or garlic or oregano oil, and everyone has their own immune booster.
Hmm.
But I would take that three-pronged approach, and I would go right after it in the lungs, and I would use a systemic antimicrobial to go after it throughout my body, and then, of course, deal with the symptoms in whatever way you see fit.
Okay, that's great information. Um, so how did you come to select the other products that you offer?
You remember when I was mentioning that I got into this business by having a family. And so I was first chasing all of the issues that my kids had. And that actually was preceded by other family members as well. Um, Wife, cousins, uncles, aunts, friends, brothers, and sisters that had problems. I looked for solutions to these based upon what I had learned from my studying and reading of what were the forgotten or heretical medical therapies. And so, based upon what my family was going through, I would come up with products for that. Obviously, you're going to focus in and recognize that I do have a hemorrhoid relief product, which We don't make much money on it, but I sell mostly as a service because after having been there, you appreciate a good hemorrhoid relief product. But there are other ones for eczema. I used to make a product for cold sores because I had friends that had that. The respiratory issues, obviously, people go through that quite regularly. Kids get colds. I had to come up with a cure for the cold. Is if for no other reason than to use it prophylactically and protect yourself. Because when they get a cold, you want to hold them on your lap and tell them it's going to be all right. Give them something to make it all right and not worry about getting infected yourself. So all the different products that we have really came out of necessity from living the last 20 years. What do I need? What do my friends need?
Yeah, I can say that I bet a bunch of families will be excited to hear that, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard from friends that the kid gets sick and then the whole family has it, whether it's a cold, the flu, a stomach bug, you name it.
Uh,
So
Stomach bugs, right? Stomach bugs. I've got the greatest thing for that. It's called food poisoning relief. I don't care whether you got it from playing in the dirt and putting your fingers in your mouth like kids do, or whether you ate some bad tuna salad. It doesn't matter. When you get food poisoning, if you drink this within an hour, you're fine. I cannot tell you how many people have told me that I've saved their vacations because they're going to Mexico or to Guatemala and they get food poisoning and they're like, oh my goodness, they're looking at 2 to 3 days,
yeah.
antibiotics in the hospital. The next morning they get up, it's like it never happened. And to have a tool like that available to you really changes your life. When I root through the refrigerator, if I find something that's been there for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not afraid of it. I'll eat it because I know if I get sick, I'll take a couple swallows of food poisoning relief and it'll be gone. These nice natural remedies that don't cause any harm and really work uh, can really free you up so that you're not running afraid of germs.
Yep.
It's very liberating.
Yeah, I'll say. And I think that's what's going on right now, is everyone is freaking out about about germs.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, that's going to be extremely helpful. Where do you see the future of natural medicine headed in the next 10 years?
There have been some changes in the last couple of years as the CBD manufacturers have come out. Um, they have been going into a marketplace that's monitored by the FDA heavily, heavy-handedly, and making all sorts of claims. Now, there are a number of things that the CBDs do well, but they've been making claims for everything. Not only was that illegal, and I'm sorry that it is, I'm not siding with the FDA at all, but it also gave people the wrong impression. When you say that it'll cure everything, they automatically assume that you're speaking nonsense and it must be no good for anything. There all sorts of different natural remedies have different areas where they shine. But what this caused was a ripple effect. And so now everybody is getting oversensitized to the claims of various natural products. I think the FDA is going to clamp down much more tightly on claims and on natural products, which over the next few years is going to make it extremely difficult for us to heal ourselves and maintain our own health. It's hard to do that without knowledge. And what they are doing is censoring the dissemination of knowledge. So in the short term, Diane, I see it getting worse. But as this new generation comes up, they tend to be a generation of people who can think for themselves, who are not necessarily going to be guided by what the allopathic medical community says, because they've seen firsthand how they've been lied to and let down. And they are much more accepting of natural remedies. Their parents used it on them. We did that. And so I think as they grow older and become more consumers and become more involved in the actual legislation process, things ultimately will change and change for the better. There are a number of predicate countries out there who have loosened up some of the regulation on natural products, and we can see how it has dramatically reduced their healthcare costs and the health of the population and the ability of the people to maintain their own health. And it's something that a free society should do. We need our civil rights, our constitutional rights back. We need them back. And I think in the long run, we will get them. But the short term, I see it getting a little worse.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe so. I completely agree with what you're saying. I feel like, when we started this conversation, we were talking about how this type of medicine has been around forever. It shouldn't be something that's like novel or not trusted or, new. It's just that people aren't educated about it. And,
Yeah.
Unfortunately in our country, most people tend to just believe, what they see and look no further. And it's just whatever the media is telling you, that's what I've got to go out and do. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and
And we
we're,
will like easy solutions.
yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I feel like a lot of people do not take responsibility for their health. They want to just take a pill and but that's what we've all been taught by the pharmaceutical companies. Just take a pill. That's all you need. You got this disease, just take this pill, or you got that. Doesn't matter what side effect it's going to cause, or that's going to lead you down another path towards some other disease. But
Exactly. Yes.
what we've tried to do, obviously, with our platform is just educate people on, look at all these other alternatives and educate yourself about them and learn about them and decide if it's right for you, for sure. But I do agree
That
about.
is,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, that is a freedom, that education process that the American people rely on and no longer have. I cannot put information, valuable information like that on my website. It's against the law. That should not be.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I used to work for a couple different nutritional supplement companies. One, in fact, right right around or right after the whole ephedra thing. And
Oh,
so, yeah, I mean, that was like a huge thing. It's just talk about like,
ephedra
what,
is an herb that was used safely all over the world, especially in the East, for thousands of years, 5,000 years. It's a wonderful, wonderful constituent to put in things for asthma and for any kind of respiratory issue, sinus problems. And now we can't use it at all.
right. Yep. Yep. I know. Well, a few people abused it, misused
Yeah,
it, and then that's all it's going to take for,
it
you
takes
know,
that and it takes a societal bias
right.
because people will abuse every single pharmaceutical ever made, but they don't deny us access to those.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother conversation.
It was just a convenient excuse for them to step in and deny us access.
Sure.
They could
Yeah.
very easily have said, use it in reasonable doses in your products, and we could have done that.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I love all the information you've given us, and you also have a book. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I'd love to. Here's the book. I don't know if you can see that. If
Yep.
maybe
Healthcare
video.
Toolkit.
That's right. And all the things that we talked about and more about dosing protocols, about what active agents really do, how they work, how to deal with particular types of conditions from eczema to back pain to shingles to reconstructing skin, dealing with burns, sunburn, all of that, everything that I ever wanted to say, it's in this book. I got very, very frustrated because I couldn't put out this information on the web. The FDA censors my website. God bless them. So I put it in a book. And if we don't have freedom of press, which is quite specifically identified in the Constitution, that's a little bit more difficult to explain why you can suppress that. So I think that it may be a more effective communication tool. So in that book, you can learn everything that I've learned for the last 20 years. Well, not everything. I've put it down in layman's terms. I haven't gotten very scientific. You will not find any numerical studies in there, no laboratory results. For most people, that just goes right over their head and they can't get it. What I did was distill it down into chapters where each chapter addresses a particular malady so that you can open the book and say, well, this is what's going on for me. What do I do? and then you can learn about it. And for instance, musculoskeletal pain, athletic performance enhancement without drugs, soft tissue damage, bruises, strains, shingles, hot flashes, urinary tract infections, ears, eyes, restless legs, sunburn, cold, hemorrhoids. All you have to do is look it up and find an answer, just like what we did with the products. We don't tell you in a book and lecture you about what different herbs do. We say, you got this condition, here's how we've learned to deal with, get rid of the symptoms, fix the cause, and help the body to heal. People have been loving the book as it helps them take care of their own health.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It's basically like, the manual to how do you treat a lot of these common ailments to more sophisticated things. And, like we're saying, educating people on what you've researched and studied and what you found works, and they just have to try it for themselves.
Absolutely. I've read dozens of books on herbology, and they all treat it like they're writing a dictionary or an encyclopedia. And then there'll be a small section at the back where they'll say, if you have this condition, here are some herbs that help. Well, that's not really good enough, because they're not giving you holistic solutions made up of different types of herbs to address different aspects of the problem. And unless you really studied that book and about 24 others, you don't know which aspects of which herbs are the most prominent. For instance, if you're going to use something like smooth fleabane, what would you use that for? Well, let's say, well, that's very good vasoconstrictor for reducing inflammation in the flesh and getting rid of edema. Well, what if I can't get it? Well, then you got to go on a search and figure out what you want. So in here, I'm using very common herbs you can buy on the internet. You can make them yourself. Or if you want to buy something, you'll understand what goes in it and how to make it work. It's more designed to be an empowerment of people that don't want to become herbologists.
Right, which most of us don't.
Right.
We don't have the time.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tennis time.
That's awesome, because you're right. Like it can be very complex. It's also, like what part of the plant is more effective for certain things. People don't even realize that. So there's certain parts of the plant. It's the combination with other herbs. It's the dosage. It's all of that. And I think for the most part, if people do want to know more about the studies, I'm sure you can give them information to go research that themselves. But really, this is just helping them understand, okay, here's how I formulate, here's how these formulations go together, here's why, and here's how you should take the product.
As a matter of fact, we recently put up a blog. It's called healthcaretoolkit.info. And on the blog, we're starting to take all of the scientific studies and clinical studies that we were not allowed to post on our website, and we're putting them up there.
That's great. So it's Healthcare Toolkit, just like the name of the book.
Correct.
.info. Okay.
Yeah, and when they go there, they can actually pull down the microbiology reports from the laboratories. These are ISO 9001 laboratories. They can read the assay protocols, look at the actual results for themselves, make their own decisions. So we're posting a lot of the microbiology, we're posting some of the clinical studies and the graphs, the comparisons, all the valuable information that we're not allowed to tell you on our website. We're going to put it on that blog.
Right. Yep. Because you're selling product on your website.
Right. Right.
So this has been awesome. Great conversation. I love all the information.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You've been a great resource. I'm sure that many people are going to learn a lot from this. How can they get in touch with you or connect with you? Where do you want to send people for more information?
That's really easy. If you go to mynaturesrite.com, that's mynaturesrite.com, there's a little button that says contact us. those emails come directly to me and I answer them every day. Sometimes I'll go back and forth a dozen times with people just to help them understand the protocols or help them understand what's going on. That's one of the most rewarding parts of my day is to be able to share information directly with people. So go to the website, click on contact us. Those emails come to me and I answer them.
Great. Awesome. Well, I'm sure people will be doing that. And this video will also be on our website,
Thank you.
naturalnutmeg.com, essentialnaples.com, and on our social media sites as well, at Natural Nutmeg Magazine and at Essential Naples Magazine. And thank you again, Stephen, for being with us today. This has been great. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.
Thanks, Diane. Good to talk with you. Bye-bye.
Too.